Did a medieval fart whisper secrets of forbidden love? Seriously, could a word born from a bellows, a follis, actually be a code for something wilder? Let's dive into a swirling, slightly scandalous history, a journey through Latin, French, Spanish, and even a few forgotten dances, all chasing a peculiar thread, the surprisingly queer roots of the word fall. Imagine a world saturated in smells, wood smoke, horse dung, and the insistent puff of a bellows. That's where our story begins, not in a grand palace but in the gritty workshops of the Middle Ages. The word follis, a sack, a pouch, a leather container, was everywhere. It held grain, spices, even, according to some particularly suggestive etymologies, a rather plump member. But this wasn't just a practical word, it carried a whiff of something else entirely. The Romans, masters of categorization, didn't just use follis to describe a bag. They associated it with the phallus, that iconic symbol of masculinity. And here's the kicker, both words share a common ancestor, beltu, a Proto-Indo-European root meaning to grow, plant, stretch. Think of a seed sprouting, a muscle expanding, or, well, you get the idea. It's a primal connection to vitality, to expansion, to potential. Now fast forward to Old French. The phallus didn't disappear, it morphed, taking on a new, slightly more embarrassing role. It began to describe someone who was windbag, fatuous, or, bluntly, an idiot. A person who puffed out their chest with empty boasts, a blustering fool. The image is clear, a deflated phallus, a useless sack, but the French weren't finished with this word. They started to connect it with breath, with the act of inflating something, like a musical instrument. Suddenly, fall wasn't just about stupidity, it was about air, about sound, about the very act of creating music. This is where things get truly bizarre. Fall began to appear in musical terms, folia, referring to songs and dances originating in fertility rituals. These weren't your polite, courtly dances, these were wild, ecstatic celebrations, often involving men dressed as women, mimicking the movements of animals and generally causing a ruckus. Think about it, fertility dances, wild music, and a word linked to a bellows, the very device used to create the sound. It's a potent combination, isn't it? And it's here, in these frenzied performances, that the queer undercurrent really begins to bubble to the surface. Let's hop across the Pyrenees to Spain. The word fall continued its evolution, but with a distinctly different flavor. In Spanish and Galician Portuguese, it still means balls, testicles, or the scrotal sac. And as the records show, the jogral or jongleur, saco, a traveling entertainer, was a frequent subject of satirical songs. Can you imagine the headlines? Jongleur ball scandalizes Spain, but the fall in Spain wasn't just about anatomy. It also took on a more philosophical meaning, folie, a state of madness, of eccentricity. Think of it as a flamboyant, theatrical kind of crazy. Joan Coromines, a Spanish philologist, described it perfectly. In antiquity, as in later ages, the phallus was a sac or a ball balloon inflated with air, whose movements were equated with the eccentric conduct of a crazy person, alternating shouts and silences. Now let's explore the word locura, which gradually replaced folie as the primary term for madness in Spain and Portugal. But even locura has a surprising connection to our friend fall. It's an older word appearing as early as the 13th century, and it carries a similar sense of wildness, of being out of control. The Spanish poet Gonzalo de Bercio, a key figure in early Spanish literature, used fall and folia in his works, adding another layer to this linguistic puzzle. And as if to confirm the connection, the Libro de Buen Amor, Book of Good Love, used fall amor in opposition to good love. It's a subtle but significant distinction, a hint of something forbidden, something outside the bounds of accepted romance. But the story doesn't end there. The French fall also found its way into musical terms, giving rise to folia, a type of dance and song that evolved from these fertility rituals. And these dances, with their suggestive movements and often gender-bending costumes, continued to spread across Europe, reaching Scandinavia and beyond. Now let's bring it back to the 13th century France, where Guillaume de Loris, the author of the Roman de la Rose, unleashed a veritable torrent of fall and folie upon his readers. He used the word more frequently than he used the names of some of his most important characters, a truly remarkable statistic. This suggests that fall wasn't just a descriptive word, it was a key element of the narrative, a way of hinting at hidden desires and subversive meanings. And here's where things get really interesting. Nelson, a scholar of medieval literature, argues that fall and folly functioned as a coded language for homosexuality. She points to the fact that the word was frequently used in conjunction with characters who defied gender norms, particularly Oisius, a mysterious female figure who guarded the vergiers of pleasure, a place of sensual indulgence. The Roman de la Rose isn't just a romance, it's a complex exploration of desire, identity, and transgression. The author's use of fall and folly suggests that he was deliberately blurring the lines between male and female, between desire and madness, between the acceptable and the forbidden. Consider the character Deduit, the owner of the vergiers, whose name translates to orgasm. It's a suggestive detail, to say the least. And then there's the Dix Dammers, the god of love, who engages in a rather explicit act of sodomy with a male figure. But the story doesn't end with the Roman de la Rose. The tradition of the Fête des Fous, the Feast of Fools, continued throughout the Middle Ages, featuring performances that deliberately challenged social norms and gender roles. These festivals were a time for revelry, for mockery, and for pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable. Today, you can still witness a remnant of this tradition in Andalusia, Spain, where the danzas de los locos, the dances of the madmen, are performed. These dances, with their elaborate costumes and suggestive movements, are a living link to the medieval past. So, what does it all mean? Is the word fall simply a linguistic accident, a quirk of etymology? Or does it carry a deeper, more subversive meaning, a hint of forbidden desire, a celebration of transgression, a recognition of the fluidity of identity? The answer, perhaps, is both. The word fall has a long and complex history, a history that is intertwined with sexuality, gender, and performance. It's a word that whispers of secrets, of hidden desires, of a world where the boundaries between sanity and madness, between male and female, are blurred. And as we conclude our journey through this fascinating linguistic landscape, let's ask ourselves one final question. Could a word born from a bellows, a follis, truly hold the key to unlocking the mysteries of queer history?